On today's episode of Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez, my film review is Millennium Actress, followed by my segment, Allow Me to Explain. And it all starts right now. This is Jordan Ramirez, and you are listening to Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. And now, here is my latest film review. My film review for this episode is Millennium Actress, released in 2001, directed by Satoshi Kon, starring Miyoko Shoji, Shozo Iizuka, Mami Koyama, Fumiko Orikasa, Shoko Tsuda, Hirotaka Suzuoki, Masaya Onosaka, Masane Sukayama, and Koichi Yamadera. Here is the synopsis of the film. Reporter Genya Tachibana, played by Shozo Iizuka, and his cameraman Kyoji Ida, played by Masaya Onosaka, travel to Hokkaido to document the life and career of former screen actress Chiyoko Fujiwara, played by Miyoko Shoji. As Genya starts to interview and ask her about her life story, Genya and Ida travel through her memories as they go back in time from her childhood up to the point where she becomes an actress at Genei Studios. And the one special memory that she has kept hidden for many years was a key that she had thought to have lost while she was working at the studio that belonged to someone whom she knew many years ago. Chiyoko throughout her career was haunted by the man whom she chased down and she wanted to be with but never managed to see his face. So what do I think of this film? This is my first time watching a Satoshi Kon film that does not feel like an animated picture. It feels real and emotional. The way I saw this film felt more of a cinematic tribute to classic cinema of Japan. One may spot a reference or two of the films at the legendary Toho Studios just from the iconic images as Genya and Ida transition from one scene to another, resembling a film from the works of Akira Kurosawa to historical drama films and other genre pictures during that period. The film not only pays homage to the legendary studio and its iconic films from that studio, such as Throne of Blood, Seven Samurai, Godzilla, and Yojimbo, but there is also at least one sequence that feels like a Yasujiro Ozu film that I have previously covered on my podcast, Tokyo Story. I am referring to the tatami mat style camera shot that is used in a majority of the director's work. These references of Chiyoko's film work intersects her life story that takes a sudden turn at a match cut that is framed at the exact moment that is timed precisely. This film is an example of blending reality with illusions, but as a positive comedic experience for entertainment and not a negative one. The moment that Chiyoko begins her earliest recollections of when she was asked to be in films at an early age before World War II was the moment that Genya and Ida are now in her memories. I love that Genya has to play a different role once they focus on a career point as she becomes a film actress in the different films that she stars in. The moment that Genya inserts himself as playing a different character, I always get a kick out of it, since it doesn't have to be serious all the time, but it can also be humorous. It's a perfect balance of drama and humor that doesn't overdo in its performances as well as the story. I love the emotional moments between Chiyoko and the mysterious unnamed man with the key. The moment that she hides him in the warehouse after his injury to run away from the man with the scar and the other right-wing authorities is when she makes a promise that they will see each other again when the war is over. It doesn't feel melodramatic or overdone. Instead, it feels more natural, organic, and subtle that makes the viewers sympathize with these characters in the story. And the next time they do meet again was during a scene that is set in a geisha film or a historical drama when the same man appears again in costume, but his face is still remain hidden in the shadows. It feels powerful just to watch those sequences to show how much they loved each other, and that the key that she still keeps with him for many years is that reminder. The voice actors in the film are marvelous in their performances throughout. The different actresses who share the performance as Chiyoko Fujiwara are amazingly different from one another. Fumiko Orikasa as the younger version of the character, Mami Koyama and Miyoko Shoji playing the adult and older version of Chiyoko respectively, each play with subtle and raw emotions that bring a complex depth to the character. Shozo Izuka as Genya Tachibana, the reporter, is amazingly funny in this film, since he is a scene stealer by putting himself in Chiyoko's memories just to help her out in a different situation of the story. He becomes enamored by the moments in her life as if they were filmed in a drama. He also gets overtly emotional in the film, just for comedic effect. Masaya Onosaka as the cameraman, Kyoji Ida, is also hilarious and is more of a straight man to his boss. He is presented in the film as Genya's comedic sidekick who has to document her entire life story that blurs fiction with reality on his camera. I always view him as one of the few people in the story who is both curious at what is going on in her life story, but also becomes annoyed at his own boss for inserting himself in her memories just for comedic relief. Koichi Yamadera as the unnamed man with the key is remarkable in his performance, as he plays the role naturally without any melodrama or exaggeration. His role is a soft and subtle character who is at the center of the right-wing government of Japan before and during the war. While I am a fan of Yamadera and the different roles that he plays in a variety of animated productions that I have watched, such as Ranma 1/2, Ghost in the Shell, and Kaiketsu Zorori, just to name a few, I always admire how he chose to play this role naturally instead of overtly exaggerated. After the success of Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue from 1997, Kon was considering trying to adapt Yasutaka Tsutsui's novel Paprika from 1993 into a feature film. The plan, however, was disrupted when the distribution company Rex Entertainment went bankrupt. So his producer Taro Maki came up with an idea that sparked Kon's screenwriting creativity. He said these words, quote, "Let's make a movie that looks like a trompe-l'oeil." Once that idea was set, Kon started writing the script after he wrote this one sentence. An old woman who was once touted as a great actress is supposed to be recounting her life story, but her memories get confused and the various roles she played in the past begin to blend into it, creating a tumultuous story. That sentence began the script writing process. The script, as it was being written by Satoshi Kon, had to be fleshed out without making the narrative too complicated. Scenario writer Sadayuki Murai and producer Taro Maki helped out during the script writing process to develop the various episodes and character settings in the plot. The character of Chiyoko Fujiwara was modeled on two of Japan's great actresses, Setsuko Hara and Hideko Takamine. For this film, Kon was able to expressively lay out his own opinions that was not based on a source material or another author's work. He wanted to emphasize the use of sound and music in this film, so he hired composer Susumu Hirasawa, whom he was a fan of his music, to compose the score for this film for artistic expressions that was completely his own. The animation production had at least 250 staff members that worked on this film for a 2-year period. The animation direction for this film was helmed by Takeshi Honda, who made a start at Ganex and was a character designer for the mecha series Metal Fighter Miku. Honda was brought on board at this production because he was known for drawing elegant pictures that would not be frowned upon by the animation industry that doesn't have to be just an animated movie. Sadly, this would be Kon's last traditionally animated film done entirely in cel animation. His next project, Tokyo Godfathers, would be done entirely in digital animation. The production budget for this film was 130 million yen, while the final budget of the production was around 100 million. It was one of the lowest production costs for an animated feature in Japan. The film made its first debut on July 28, 2001, at the Fantasia Film Festival in Montreal, Canada. It was later released in Japan on September 14, 2002. The film was released in the United States on September 12, 2003, after it was acquired by DreamWorks' then independent division, Go Fish Pictures. The film was screened at a total of 6 theaters. The advertising campaign was minimal and did not make a big splash outside of New York and Los Angeles, where the film was shown. The film would later be acquired by the anime distribution company 11 Arts, and was re-released in theaters in 2 separate dates, August 13, 2019 for the Japanese language version, and August 19, 2019 for the English dubbed version. The film received positive critical praise when it first came to the United States, and was featured in Cinefantastique magazine in a February 2004 issue under the article 10 Essential Animations. The article said of the movie, "It represents a new maturity for anime, one where the technical achievements of 40 years are finally put at the full service of an emotionally rich story." The film received the grand prize and the Japan Agency of Cultural Affairs Media Arts Festival, tying with Spirited Away in 2002. It received 4 nominations at the 2004 Annie Awards, including Outstanding Direction and Writing, and it was promoted as a contender for the 2003 Oscar for Best Animated Feature, but it was not nominated. All I can say about this film is that I love the story, Kon's theme of blending reality with illusions, the voice cast, and direction. For my listeners who have never seen this film or the works of Satoshi Kon, I highly recommend that you watch this film and his other work that has now been recognized as a technological and creative achievement in cinema and animation. We will be right back with Allow Me to Explain. The U.S. Senate on Tuesday held the third confirmation hearing for FCC Commissioner nominee Gigi Sohn, who was nominated by the Biden administration in the last congressional session, and now has been renominated earlier this year, so I thought that it would be a great time to do an update of her nomination to become the third FCC Commissioner. It's time for Allow Me to Explain. So, just to give a heads up, Gigi Sohn was previously nominated by the Biden administration to be the third FCC commissioner in 2021. And while Sohn had gone through 2 previous hearings, her nomination was not brought to the full United States Senate. The reason was that the moderate Democratic senators were in a tight spot regarding the midterm election in 2022 in their home states, such as Catherine Cortez Masto from Nevada, for example. They were pressured by the big ISPs such as Comcast, AT&T, and the Murdochs to oppose her nomination to the full United States Senate. Comcast brought their lobbyists to stop her confirmation, while right-wing media organizations and politicians claimed that she would censor conservative outlets and voices. And one of the reasons why her nomination was brought to the Senate was due to the rising anxiety that Senate Democrats had feared that if they lost a seat or didn't gain a seat or two, they would not have the chance to confirm her on the Senate floor. Now, after more than 14 months of her nomination being stalled, President Biden and his administration renominated her to the FCC position on January 3rd of this year. This would give her another chance of getting the spot on the FCC and for a full confirmation vote in the United States Senate after Democrats gained a seat in Pennsylvania and Raphael Warnock was able to keep his seat in Georgia during the 2022 midterm elections. But just after she was re-nominated by the Biden administration, the right-wing news outlet, the Daily Mail, published a smear campaign on their website by accusing Sohn of being a radical with ties to the nonprofit organization Electronic Frontier Foundation. The article is a spin on the Electronic Frontier Foundation's opposition to SESTA/FOSTA, which was signed into law in 2018. The law was considered unconstitutional since it harmed free speech and thwarted the effort of sex workers and human trafficking victims from getting help. The article is part of a homophobic smear campaign to prevent Sohn from getting confirmed to the FCC. One United States senator noticed that the smear campaign that is meant to veer Sohn's nomination off course, and that is, of course, Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. He urged his colleagues to advance and confirm her to the full Senate. Markey said of the smear campaign targeted at her sexual orientation, quote, "It is outrageous that the FCC has gone without a full slate of commissioners while the nomination of the supremely qualified and prepared nominee Gigi Sohn languishes amidst lies and homophobia." He later said, quote, "The work of the Commission from Net Neutrality to Closing the Digital Divide is too important for this nomination to be delayed any further. Gigi Sohn is President Biden's nominee, and Congress should confirm her as soon as possible. As a member of the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee and a longtime advocate for advancing telecommunications equity and access, I will continue to fight back against baseless attacks and push for swift confirmation," end quote. On February 9th, a coalition of 40 advocacy groups, each representing reproductive rights, racial justice, and private advocacy, sent a letter to Congress to call on them to confirm Gigi Sohn to the FCC as the third commissioner. This was mentioned on a newsletter by the nonprofit advocacy organization Fight for the Future. This was just before Gigi Sohn's third confirmation hearing was scheduled for February 14th at the Senate Commerce Committee at 10 a.m. During her confirmation hearing on Tuesday, Sohn made a testimony in which she shot back at her critics who opposed her confirmation. Quote, "I believe deeply that the regulated entity should not choose their regulator. Unfortunately, this is the exact intent of the past 15 months of false and misleading attacks on my record and my character. My industry opponents have hidden dark money groups and surrogates because they fear a pragmatic, pro-competition, pro-consumer policymaker who will support policies that will bring more faster and lower-priced broadband and new voices to your constituents. The FCC has been without a majority for the entirety of the Biden administration over 2 years. At a time when closing the digital divide is front and center, there are too many important issues in front of the Commission to lack a full complacent of members. Ensuring fair access to broadband and protecting consumers' privacy. Americans deserve a full FCC where I could play a critical role in addressing every one of these. But time is of the essence. And she also mentioned in her testimony about why the FCC needs a consumer advocate who they can look up to when it comes to arguing for consumer-related protection regulations at the FCC. Quote, I believe it is critical for at least one member of the FCC to be a commissioner advocate who has spent a career not beholden to any interest but that of the public. I've certainly worked with industry toward common goals, and many in industry are among the over 400 groups that support my confirmation. But my roots and my heart are with the everyday Americans by the FCC law is tasked to serve. Despite the usual criticism from Republicans about the old tweets that were on her Twitter account and some non-existent tweets that she had not put out when she was on the committee, she is still a qualified candidate who I believed will be confirmed sometime this spring when she is out of the Senate Commerce Committee and her full nomination comes to the United States Senate. So, what you can do about it is call your senator and let them know that you are passionate about a fully functional FCC and to confirm Gigi Sohn to the FCC as the third commissioner. You can also talk about the situation on your social media page, either on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or on your blog account if necessary. If you want to help out the cause, you can join or donate to these nonprofit websites: fightforthefuture.org, EFF.org, freepress.net, mediajustice.org, etc. This has been Allow Me to Explain. You have been listening to Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. This series is now available to listen to at 4 p.m. on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public every Friday. And just as a reminder, make sure to like and subscribe to my podcast on Spotify. And also as another reminder, because I had a previous goal of making it to 50 listeners, I now have a new goal that I think would be essential, and that instead of 50 listeners, we will have to reach to at least 100 listeners to keep the show going. So if you have a friend or family member who is into movie reviews or movies in general, make sure to recommend this podcast. Make sure to go to my blog website at filmtalkwithjordanramirezpodcast.wordpress.com with my latest podcast episode on the page labeled Episodes. You can contact me on my social media feeds such as LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I am also available on Letterboxd. If there is a film that you recommend that I would put for my next review, make sure to submit it to my social media accounts. And until then, I'll see you at the movies.
I can't stop loving you. I've made up my mind to live in memories of the lonesome time. I can't stop wanting you. It's useless to say, so I'll just live my life in dreams of yesterday. Dreams of yesterday. Those happy hours that we once knew, though long ago, they still make me blue. They say that time heals a broken heart, but time has stood still since we've been apart. Made up my mind to live in memories of the lonesome time. I can't stop wanting you. It's useless to say, so I'll just live my life in dreams of yesterdays. Those happy hours that we of the lonesome time. Sing the song, children.
I can't stop wanting you.
It's useless to say, so I'll just live my life of dreams of yesterday.